I'm changing this computer setup completely. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye to the 2014 MacBook Pro and the 2012 iMac that has served me well for the last 6.5 years. And say hello to the 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro, bursting at the seams with power, paired with a high-end 4K photo editing display. Well, that's what we're here to figure out. I'm condensing down to one streamlined system and deciding on one of the last critical pieces of hardware, the display. Namely, for my primary task of photo editing, I am getting 4K, but should I stick with the typical 27-inch size or move up to a 32-inch? So let me introduce the stars of the show. Here we have the BenQ SW271 and SW320. From here on out, just referred to as the 27 and the 32. I reached out to BenQ and asked for some displays to compare, so they sent me one of each. I had done a lot of research about 4K displays for photographers, and while there are several good options, I thought the BenQ offerings were a sweet spot of high quality but not exorbitant prices. Good really comes down to an accurate color and tone rendition. Here's the rest of the hardware we're working with. A 2018 MacBook Pro, pretty well loaded up, hooked up to an OWC Thunderbolt 3 dock, with hard drives and peripherals plugged into that. I can drop the laptop in the stand, plug in a single cable, and get to work. For external monitors, 27 inches has been the standard for a while now, so the question boils down to, is this a more is better situation, or is it a you can have too much of a good thing situation? Since I've got to test drive both of these for the past few weeks, I've got some real world experience under my belt. Alright, these displays. First, let's look at how they're similar. Both have pleasingly smooth, matte screens, 4K resolution, USB ports and an SD card reader on the side, a bunch of ports on the back including HDMI and USB, and either USB-C or mini DisplayPort or DisplayPort for video connection. They have detachable hoods, which don't really work well in a multi-display arrangement, but can help cut the glare from harsh side light if you're only using one monitor. They both have great height, tilt, and rotation adjustment, and very sturdy handles for moving them around. They both feature this puck thing that changes screen color modes, which I don't really see using myself, and gives more of a cluttered look to the desk, but there you have it. It's there if you want it. Because they're the same resolution, but one has a bigger physical size, that means they have different pixel densities, and I'll try to not lose you here. The 27-inch has a pixel density of 163 ppi, that's pixels per inch, as compared to the 32-inch, which has 140 pixels per inch. Pixel density matters only when considered alongside the viewing distance. For instance, the iPhone X screen is 458 ppi, and the MacBook Pro Retina display is 220 ppi. Roadside billboards are printed about 12 ppi, or dpi, because the viewing distance is so far, even though the image is huge. The closer the viewing distance, the higher the pixel density needs to be to achieve the perception of a high-quality image. But hold that thought, we'll circle back around to this later. So, they're very similar, but let's look at how they're different. The 27-inch was more recently updated, which is apparent by its inclusion of USB-C and a virtually invisible bezel. It looks really nice on the desk. It's hard to really translate this to video, but the matte finish on the screen of the 27-inch appears to be ever so slightly less matte than the 32, which I think is nice. Now, some things I don't love so much about them. I wish the rotation would click them into place at 90-degree increments. Because it doesn't, it can end up sitting slightly cockeyed, which is irritating. And I do wish the 32 was updated in tandem with the 27 so it would feel like new tech. The 32 is huge already, plus its thick bezels makes the total package a monster. Luckily, I have a pretty empty 8-foot desk, so that's not a deal breaker. So as I said starting out, the features and performance are so similar, the size difference is really the biggest deciding factor. It's hard to conceptualize the difference between the two sizes. 32 inches is 32% bigger than 27 inches, but that doesn't really mean anything to me, so let's take a look at it. It's substantial, it's not just 5 inches. It's bordering on feeling like a small TV, which depending on who you are and what you use it for, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I found I need one monitor for working and a second one for secondary tasks, like viewing reference files, emails, or let's be real.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Hey, long editing sessions can get monotonous. You gotta stay awake somehow. While I do plan on having 2 displays, I can only use one as a primary workhorse. If I'm editing in Photoshop, The whole workspace needs to be on that one screen. I can't do that thing where you have the image on one screen and the toolbars and other settings on the other screen. For that second display, there's no real need for it to be 4K unless they release the Office in 4K.
No!
So a 1440 pixel option would likely be perfect. But this current decision is about the primary workspace display. Even if I choose the 32, I'd still need a second. Okay, I'll stop beating around the bush. Is 32 inches too big of a display for a creative professional? My answer, unfortunately, is maybe, sorta, but it depends. I'm a photographer who does very little video, and I only need so much space for tool panels, like in Photoshop and Capture One. I know that there are way more tool panels and pages that you want to have open in apps like Premiere Pro and Final Cut for video, for which the physically larger screen may be a nice option. I thought originally that I'd lean toward the 32-inch because, hey, why not? Especially because the costs aren't dramatically different. They're only about $300 apart at about $1,100 and $1,400 for the 27 and 32-inch respectively. But it's not been so easy to decide, and I've been waffling back and forth. I've spent a few full days editing on each monitor to really get a feel for them, and found myself gravitating to the 27-inch. I think what it comes down to is the field of vision with these human eyes that I have. Because of the depth of my desk, my viewing distance is relatively close. I found myself often not running apps full screen on the 32-inch and would just have a window kind of centered in the middle of the screen with wasted space around the edges because full screen just felt too big. When I did use full screen, I had to do some surprisingly dramatic head turns to look from left to right on the screen and spend a lot more time hunting for the tools and for the cursor. Some of these problems can be alleviated by just sitting back further away. Compared to the 27-inch, where I can contain the whole screen in my field of view and feel like I have a better command of what I'm looking at. This gets back to what I was saying about pixel density. I've realized that it almost entirely comes down to your viewing distance. A smaller screen viewed from closer with more dense pixels, like an iPhone, is effectively the same as a larger screen viewed further away with less dense pixels. What I'm getting at is the size difference between the 27 and 32 is really more of a perceived difference based on viewing distance. Across the board with both displays, I'm incredibly impressed. The shadow detail is really wonderful, the colors are true, pretty much everything as I want it. Coming from a 1440 iMac, 4K is blowing my mind. I'm able to achieve better results faster. Small imperfections in detail are visible more clearly without hunting around on a super magnified image. For the reasons I've gone over, the USB-C, thin bezel, slightly glossier screen, and comfortable viewing experience, I'm leaning toward purchasing the 27-inch. I haven't decided if I'll do 4K or 1440 for the second display. Honestly, if I get 4K, it would just be so that they match. There you have it. The BenQ SW271 and SW320. Two powerhouse 4K displays. If you have a deeper desk, consider the 32-inch, and if you sit closer to the screen, the 27-inch may be the one for you. Either way, I think you'll be pleased. Which setup would you choose? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so, and I'll see you next time.